Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I am Keith Merrill. I am currently serving in the Army, active duty. I'm stationed in Korea right now. I will be coming back in February, and I'm super excited for that. Um, I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I am pursuing my master's in developmental psychology, and I have yet to figure out exactly what I'm going to do with it whenever I do graduate. But I'm still not sure if I will be in the military after that in the next 2 years or not. But I covered social influence part two and was casting chapters 7 and 8. Chapter 7 was on conformity. Chapter 8 was group processes. The two articles we had to read were Hawley exploring social identity theory and the black sheep effect among college student athletes and non-athletes, and Reese, the myth of conformity, adolescence, and abstention from unhealthy drinking behaviors. In order to better understand everything that we covered, it's best to start with social influence. Social influence is defined as the ways that people are affected by the real and imagined pressures of others. There are three forms of social influence. They are conformity, compliance, and obedience. And with we'll start by discussing conformity first. Conformity is defined as the tendency of people to change their perceptions, opinions, and behavior in ways that are consistent with group norms. People may conform to group norms or maintain their independence. Um, Easy example of conformity: flash mobs, or going to a football game and chanting defense and unity, or creating the wave, or just to sum it up, basically monkey see, monkey do. Two types of conformity: private conformity and public conformity. Private conformity, also known as true acceptance or conversion, describes instances in which others cause us to change not only our overt behavior but our minds as well. Being a part of this conformity basically means you believe that the group is correct in their actions. Public conformity, also known as compliance, is a superficial change in overt behavior without corresponding change of opinion that is produced by real or imagined pressure. Next, why do people conform? Two reasons: a need to be right. So basically, this is also called informational influence. People want to make a good and accurate judgment of reality and assume that when others agree on something, they must be right. And the second one is a fear of ostracism. So basically, the fear of rejection. Next, we will be discussing compliance. Compliance is defined as changes in behavior that are elicited by direct requests. An example of this is somebody saying, "Hey, can you do me a favor?" There are four different types of compliance. Foot in the door technique is the first one. It's basically breaking the ice by starting with a small request. An example of this would be somebody asking you, for $5 one week, and the following week they might ask you for, say, for example, $10. They just keep going up in the amount that they request. Lowballing. This is mainly experienced in business relationships or transactions. So you go to a car lot and you see a car that you really like, and you and the salesman agree on the price, and the salesman comes back saying that the manager did not approve that price. So now they have to, increase it by, say, $500. So you now in a situation where you really like the car because it has all the features that you like, but you're also having to pay, a little more than you bargained for. During the face technique, an initial request that is sure to be declined is made and counteroffered with a second, more reasonable request. Usually, this is a technique that's done on purpose just to kind of lure you into buying the product, anyways. And the fourth one, that's not all. Similar to during the face, however, you decrease the initial size by offering a discount or a bonus. So there are three reasons that I came up with why people comply. Compliance is determined by a few factors. These factors include how well we know a person, so the relationship that we have with them, culture, and the nature of the request. One of the main reasons why people comply, though, is the idea of freedom. This increases the chances of compliance. And an example of this would be somebody saying, you're free to choose, you're free to accept or refuse, whenever they make a request to you. And once again, this kind of puts you in like a tough situation and starts to make you think about, whether you want to really accept or refuse it. The third type of social influence is obedience. Obedience is defined as behavioral changes that are produced by commands of authority, an authority figure, or minimal signs of authority. An example of this would be, you know, being obedient to our parents, or another example, Nazi officials killing the millions of individuals that they killed due to the simple fact that they claimed they were following orders. Just some little insight into obedience. In Milgram's classic research, pulled from the Hawley article, 65% of all the participants that participated in the shock treatment experiment, 65% of the participants obeyed the experimenter and administered the maximum possible shock. Um, One interesting thing that I got from that article was that Milgram had theorized that participants were swept up in a situational moment that he had created, leading them to exhibit obedience. And another possible explanation was that researchers theorized that participants shocked the learner because they later identified with the scientific enterprise as in one way or another, and they wanted to help the experimenter and make a contribution to the societal or scientific environment, I should say. Um, yeah. And just a little summary of chapter 7. Just some key points right here to point out. Charisse' 1936 classic study showed that sometimes we conform to other people's judgments and behaviors because we are uncertain of what is correct and use others for informational guidance. Another one. At times, people are likely to comply with direct requests, for example, when taken by surprise, when the request sounds reasonable, and when they feel indebted to the requester. Another key thing to point out that was on one of the previous slides is that at times our mind is on what we would call autopilot, where we don't really think about what somebody is asking us. We just know, that we're going to respond. So we might be quick to say yes or quick to say no before we even realize what's being asked of us. Chapter 8 was on group processes. The main focus was how can a group be better or worse than its individual members? What is a group? Why do people join groups? And the 3 features of a group. So how do we define groups? A group is defined as a set of individuals who interact over time and have a shared fate, goals, or identity. So there is a difference between a collective and a group. A collective is an assembly of people who are not directly engaging with each other. An example of this would be customers standing in line waiting to order food at a restaurant. They are assembled, however, they are there for their individual reasons. Features of groups. There's 3 features. There's roles, norms, and cohesiveness. It's also important to point out that the process of joining a group can be formal or informal. Formal would be an orientation program at a job or something to that extent. And then informal would be observing current members in a group. And the last thing, groups that we attach ourselves to often give us meaning and purpose. At times, these groups can give us a symbolic sense of immortality, as our most cherished groups live on beyond our lifetimes. And an example of this would be fraternities or sororities. Roles are defined as a set of expected behaviors in a group. I see that I made a mistake on this slide under the examples. Um, so I'm going to skip to types of roles. I'm sure that you have an idea of an example of a role. So types of roles: formal, designated by title; informal, no title, however it is still powerful; instrumental, helps the group achieve its task; expressive, provide emotional support and maintain morale. Excuse me. So in terms of understanding roles, each role in a group can be filled by different members of that group and can change over time depending on the agenda or needs of that group. An individual's skills must match the role that they are taking on in a group in order for that group to succeed. And last but not least, at times a member or members of a group can become so absorbed in their role that they begin to lose themselves. This was seen in the prison experiment with the guards as well as the warden. Norms are defined as rules of conduct for members. Examples of norms: who pays for dinner, what clothes to wear to a function. Types of norms will be formal, informal, cultural norms. And understanding norms, deviations from group norms can threaten group members' sense of uniformity and social identity with the group. And then deviation from a group norm is met with more tolerance if members see the group as more variable than if the group is seen as sharing similar background and values. And this was a pretty big part of chapter 8. It's called social facilitation. Um, so, facilitation is defined as a process where the presence of others enhances performance on easy tasks but impairs performance on difficult tasks. Social facilitation is universal and occurs in nature among animals as well as people, obviously. The presence of others creates a general physiological arousal that results in the energization of behavior. Increased arousal enhances an individual's tendency to perform the dominant response. The dominant response is the reaction elicited most quickly and easily by a given stimulus, and the quality of an individual's performance varies according to the type of task. So there's three different explanations for social facilitation. The first one is mere presence, basically just about having the mere presence of somebody around you will is enough to affect your performance. Evaluation apprehension theory: the belief that the presence of others only produces social facilitation effects when those present are viewed as potential evaluators. Perfect example of this would be me recording this uh, PowerPoint um, and possibly thinking that I'm going to be evaluated by you guys. That's a perfect example. The last one is distraction conflict theory: the belief that the presence of others will produce social facilitation effects simply because those present will distract from the task and create attentional conflict. Examples: you are just learning to play a musical instrument. The presence of others may significantly impair your ability to play the way you would normally play had you been alone. Summary of Chapter 8: people join the group for a variety of reasons, not only to perform tasks that can't be accomplished alone, but also to enhance self esteem, social identity, and a greater sense of purpose. It's important to have a clear understanding of what your role is in a group, because if you don't, then there could be conflict with the other roles or other members of the group, which could, affect your satisfaction or group performance as a result of that. And last but not least, people in groups tend to do worse when they have this do your best idea or goal instead of having very specific or ambitious goals. The two questions that I've come up with for this presentation: the first one is thinking about your daily life in the groups that you belong to. How does social influence, excuse me, play a part in those groups? And two, how does social influence relate to Romans 12 verses 1 through 2? And that is the conclusion of my presentation. Thank you.